Greta Thunberg no doubt sees herself in the children of Gaza, and more people should. We see what they want from us, and they expect us to do to each other, from how we sit still saying nothing. Mark Twain is sometimes evoked as illustration, a signboard, a road attraction of the division between those who believe in deeply in Sharia law and those who abide by secular law in the West, because he was sarcastic about religious oaths. And there's more to it than that. He was a man of conscience. He spoke out eloquently with great history and force against the first real colonial war fought by the United States, which has its mirror in the way Gaza has been covered by TikTok, so much that I call it a TikTok war, in that Hollywood went to the Philippines and staged incidents claiming they were real historical films, footage of battlefield scenes, and so on. It was a media event, in other words. It was also a colonial war that had him really pissed off. I'm a firm believer that we should establish our priorities based on memories of things that have gone before. In my case, who ever heard of a child who was kidnapped and brutally tortured, being set upon by right-wing media figures from Hollywood and New York's Publication Alliance, and tortured again into injuries of mortal severity as an answer to him trying to get help? Well, everybody has heard of it, but nobody's admitting it. But it's not exactly a shining example of how the FBI and the police department have conjured the situation where Iowa caucuses are reported to be in a great deal of fright about the prospects of World War III and Civil War coming, without a clue as to how this happened, who's responsible, what is at stake, what we should do, and so on. So I propose to remind you a little bit about the past, how the past operated, who the past were, and I have 2 days to summon some notes, study of notes towards this end. So I'll be making at least a few broadcast tapes in the hopes that somebody watches them. But of course, nobody who watches them tells me that they're watching them. So I have this terrible feeling of isolation. I cannot do anything about these problems in isolation. But if people who know my name, my heritage, my talents will realize at once that it can't be friendly attacking me to the United States. Somehow they have gotten it into their heads that it is friendly. So I would like to tell you a little bit about them, who they are, and how they've operated in the past. To do this takes a good deal of navigating. And in terms of being a secret anchor held hostage by them through Jeffen Corporation wiretaps, they have used me as a navigator of their war aims. They even made a movie called Navigator, which had allusions to the Burston script that they planted on my house. Burston is a name from The Exorcist. She was working with William Friedkin, and Bibi Netanyahu on films like The Exorcist and the real world film of Jimmy Crary, James McRowland Crary. What they pulled was an ideological gangster system through media with clock to the AIDS attack. Now, of course, Friedkin was a foul-mouthed person who, like Larry Flint, thought they dared you to say that they didn't care about AIDS victims. Sean Straub went to the Dakota and gave himself AIDS. So did Michael Foucault. Presumably, so did Freddie Mercury. These are people who didn't care. They'd given up. They were suicidal artists. They were nihilists. And they claimed to be promoting the spirit, to be promoting a better world ahead, to be martyrdom, to care about people despite the fact that this had happened, to gratify the ego of the victims. They created somebody to torture, just to torture, a voodoo doll, and they'd stick me with terrible suffering, a nerve agent they used on me, but that's not AIDS. They raped my deaf advocate, but that's not AIDS. And they kept doing this over and over again and taking the phenomenon that I wrote in my poetry and plugging it through Jeff and with the help of Mick Jagger and Yoko Ono and showing what sort of theatrical skills Oliver Stone had. They were calling a medicine man, blowing up laboratories, bringing down 911, saying this is therapy for the victims. In other words, the people who did it were protesting. And nobody called them on it because they claimed that Reagan didn't know. The whole storyline is a fabrication from the script itself that they knew about perfectly. They just said, come, let me have that. And took it behind my back. I started to remember some things from it that made me look at it again. Like she said, I never told you this, but I disowned you. Now I'm going to write you back into my will. This was letters were coming when I was being tortured from the daughter of a magistrate in Allegheny County. The poetry thieves are queuing up. They got a guy, the Boy Scouts got a guy named Robert Card to shoot up a bowling alley over Robert's postcard, which is a symbol of Bowling Green State University, because Bowling Green came flying in with state police when I started talking about the nerve agent the Attica State Prison psychiatrist forced on me when I was a little boy, because he was a Zionist and felt the the carpet chewing, dog tearing Toya Wilcox need to torture a nice blonde boy is what they called me. And under what Miles Kirshner called the too good principle. And Miles now turns out to be the first initials of Bibi Netanyahu's real name. What a little BB you are. Shoot the bird with the BB. So they have a feedback loop in Pennsylvania where minor corruption is controlled against reporting major corruption by the fear of being implicated themselves, which of course they say, it's a provincial norm. No one escapes this web of control by the higher mafia of the Axis villainy in Hollywood. And when they stole the papers and went to South Africa and said, we'll free Nelson Mandela and call him an elder. And South Africa will say, this is great. We get to conquer the pussy ball of the war game. We're Trojans, warriors. Africa's sacred alliance with Germany and Barack Obama to the rescue. They had a bookstore called Mandela Books with Steve Scioli, who has Fripp's address, one of the Boy Scouts in this situation, who brought Fripp to tears on one occasion, I suspect. But he said he was like this with Fripp, and Fripp didn't trust me. He trusted them. So I said, here's his address, whatever. So, this public guides like this with these pouches from Mandela Books who turn out right across the street from John Schulman, who drives me out of town for reporting him to the post office and gets arrested on a $6 million museum heist. And they start shaking me down. Do you have any valuable books, Queerball, you want to tell us about? Well, I went to governor's school. Everybody knew John Schulman's aptitude for learning about books. He's the one that led me to Shavetti, which was the opening shot of Gaza, was Shirilla. It was a name signifier from guerrilla theater. In this little Taliban books, it's the little Taliban show they have on the museum street known as Craig. And the way they pull this is through an apparatus of, like, I got a book from this guy named Rollo, which is like Russo, Rock and Rollo. Okay, but they switched the Secret Service signifier to LL for Louis Laffin and other details of their poacher syndicate, right? And it's from a Jewish Chronicle writer about what they called the Beehive. Did you know that the Beehive were tombs? That's what they come up with as a statement of their generation in the 90s after the AIDS attack, a symbol of tombs, beehive tombs. And they're all worshiping at the beehive tombs, right? And these friendly people from Night of the Living Dead to William Friedkin get the upper hand at, get this, the University of Pittsburgh, through the help of that Frankenstein, Ronald Reagan. And Barack Obama gets poacher general of the bloodbath. So that's the stuff that needs to go back and be evaluated, because they had two very conspicuous military operations going. We've already been through Civil War. What they did was, okay, you had this encampment, which was Jewish, Zionist, Pittsburgh retards of hate and thievery and slander. God, how they slander people. Joseph Israeli are creative slanderers. They really come up with stuff. You know, they kick you in the fucking head as a 9-year-old, ejaculate on you as a 9-year-old, kick you in the head, kick you in the head as a gang, as an armed gang, and then say, you're not speaking sensitively about us. So that's one camp. And the other camp are the evil people who are bystanders and completely innocent. Then you have another camp, which is black people. And anything that happens to the Jews has to be answered by the innocent white bystanders. And anything that happens to the black community has to be answered by the innocent white bystanders. And it's not just that, it's also ideological camps. Anything that happens to the right wing has to happen to the left wing. Because Peter Gabriel is playing Balance the Hemispheres on his floating uterus. Okay, his sacred, secret, mystical uterus from the Swami Nostra of this violent femmes and the feminazi androgyny system of the hypnotic estate of the Dalai Lama and William Friedkin and Larry Flint's laboratory, And Unit Zappa plugs herself into this stuff and goes, neat, I got the gizmo going. So when Lucille Ball dies, Abby Hoffman has to die. Okay, that was one of their gizmos. Another gizmo they did was Yo Yimbo. What that means is they go out and zap a black person and then zap a white person and make it look like a feud. But who's doing it? These sacred Jewish Swami Nostra people. And they make it look like a feud. Let's play with their heads. Let's play with their heads. No, I gotta get something for Tupac. So they go after Alina Shaykat, the white girl, the white, and they get all satisfied, and it turns out another black guy killed Tupac. But it's all connected up. They're connecting up the dots for Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And they get away with it. They get away with it, and they need psychiatrists, but there is no such thing as a rational psychiatrist. Jack Ruby was originally named Rubenstein, and Ruben, they called him. And he owned a strip joint. And he was a Jewish, very corrupt Zionist with a girl named Gail at his side, named Gail Raven at his side. And he had the same psychiatrist as Charlie Manson. So this girl, Gail Burston, shows up at the house of Jenny Rubin in Pittsburgh in Kansas State. Jenny Rubin likeness appears on the strip joint of Japanese Roman pink film. And the Mancine family come in and start snuff film kiddie porn in Highland Park District. And who ever heard of the people trying to get help being tortured again by this same mafia as adults? They've given me mortal injuries. I couldn't get my wallet out of my pocket yesterday because the cold had aggravated my Parkinson's so bad. It poisoned me in the mouth, so now I have to get root canal from an abscess. These people are homicidal maniacs. And Joe Biden is under some kind of hypnotrance to them. And they don't have the slightest clue as to what sort of foreign allies are potentially available to America if we care about civilians. We've seen what they want to do to the civilians. They want to butcher them. They're clearing. If anybody who thinks that Gaza isn't a proxy were to get them out by Friday for real estate deals on that beautiful coastline is crazy. This is Trumpington and Hezbollah asserting their ideas about investment in the gargantuan megalopolis complexes available to the very powerful in the world's royal religions. People like Netanyahu and Putin go way back. Zelensky himself is a Hollywood Zionist. And his name is a signifier of the whole thing. Zal was up on Mount Desert Island in that Boy Scouts crowd. He came on to me at Temple University in the 80s before AIDS existed, talking about a scheme to transform the human race by injecting the blood. I went up and investigated and found that this guy who was announcing Joseph Goebbels was being protected by South African National Congress and Cantu Repertory Theater in the name of Gail Burston because Shulman and Ringo Starr were pulling a museum heist at Mandela Books with Robert Fripp. This was really happening. And Vaclav Havel comes in, he's all zany, with Minion and Zappa. Zany, us. We're going to say that virginity proves rape because the queer ball has a neuroplasm that's making him cry. Zany, us. So, what you see is a situation with Jennifer Rubin on Roman Pink porno, which is working with the Roman Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, and he got all of this stuff together with the help of Yoko Ono. And they're using a signifier 47 for DG. They use alphanumeric encryption, fourth letter A, B, C, D, and 7, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. DG for D.W. Griffith, the Monte Gaullus, Woody Allen's Pun the God, but 74. It's flip-flop. Because they went from 46 to 64, which is 18 years, AAH. Get it? They had it all in the script. I'm not making any of this up. They had it all. They killed Martin Luther King 4-4 for DD's birthday, which is the Library of Congress classification for Nazi Germany. If anybody had any sense when John Lennon promoted Yoko Ono after the murders with Revolution Number 9, after the murders of King and Robert Kennedy, somebody would have said, and when I say any sense, I mean learn something about Japanese culture. One of the most important myths is the 47 Ronin, who lay in wait for a really long time to get revenge. So these poetry thieves are actually subconsciously, like Biden is subconsciously, neurobotic avengers of the Axis system. And they're all programmed like Boris Karloff's decoder. Must kill Jimmy Queerball. Must kill Jimmy Queerball. And they get the Boy Scouts. They come to the lunchroom and ask me, what state is your sister in? What state is yours? And they have these Muslim people who defend David Jeffin, the great Zionist, over the museum heist down on Craig Street, right? You're not allowed to talk about them. Cantu Theater to the rescue of the girl who was left a virgin. This is the for in the name of Joseph Goebbels and Lansky, like Ouspensky, the fourth dimensional psychologist that Gurdjieff was attending with Fripp School with the help of a proxy named Walter Hodorowski on Franklin Graham Street. They have it all wired up. And nationalism is central to the whole issue because nationalism bypasses conscience conspicuously when it comes to the warlords of Christian nationalism and the way they hotwire their ideas through Air America, Richard Secord and Oliver North, of how the good guys like Michael Foucault, a degenerate pig who UW Dialectical Capitol Hill loved for his nihilism about the AIDS attack. Don't you dare say we don't care about the AIDS victims. You won't tell them the truth. You won't let them protect themselves. You won't let the at risk walk away from risk and contagion because of your psychopathy, because you must react against anybody who tells the truth about what has happened. Okay? And they have this culture who absolutely love the people who did it to them, who absolutely worship at the shrine. So you have Len Ouspensky for the fourth dimensional psychologist, and all the evidence shows that Yoko Ono was behind all this. So why would they have a picture of Gail Burstall in a 1979 record of Robert Fripp and then continue working with her, even having Mick Jagger fly to Tel Aviv to promote the demolition of Gaza if she had killed John Lennon? They're too busy attacking me because I was John Lennon's target. All of the evidence in the cinema shows that the Christian nationalists had Lennon as their right-hand man all along. They pulled a Houdini. The story of the double fantasy didn't really happen. Sean Chapman magnanimously accepted a life sentence over Lennon's so-called demise because he knew they were going to release a mass murder for Christendom. So he said, well, they didn't get me for the right crime, but I sure do deserve it, to himself. That's where it stands. It's a state secret. And they used a Shaviti nerve agent, which induces a Holocaust trauma, an extreme situation, on Mackenzie Shirilla to signify that Mackenzie, the brain researcher in this wolf pack at the University of Pittsburgh, was involved. So they played this ideological shell game. Now, I don't mean to say that Greta Thunberg should be the scourge of the Green Party. We all have a common interest in preventing ecocide. But these people were putting out flame over Africa. They did this deliberately in the 70s with Yoko Ono cover songs, and lying about what they did to me for the Neva Pornographic Syndicate, what they're interested in. Here's what Netanyahu is doing that's getting put through the feedback because nobody's doing anything conscientious to expose this. They talk about places in Africa where the people are so poor that the warlords give them water in exchange for sexual servitude, right? And little blonde boys start disappearing from Gaza, and Netanyahu publicly brags about sending them to the Congo. What's going on? It's child trafficking, right? It's Epstein's Island stuff. And Bill Clinton and Barack Obama were the warlords of the whole thing. They clocked two virgins' pussy ball over Maduri Goto to the AIDS attack and told everyone, don't ask, don't tell about what's going on. This is what's going on. They're using the Swami Nostra symbol system. So this is going to be 25 minutes, and that's a long video, and there's still a lot more to cover. So I'm going to put this one on public display in case anybody wants to know what is freaking out Iowa behind the scenes. It comes from the double cross image of Casablanca and Hollywood. The Axis came in the revolving doors.